I've sometimes believed that when it comes to planning for Disney World, overplanning can feel like a trap. Like overplanning is a bad thing. But then I see trips that genuinely don't go well. These are usually the trips that, unfortunately, people will look back on and tell themselves, like, that wasn't worth it. It was such a waste of money. And I found that more often than not, there were key things missing. Because here's something that surprised me last year when I was digging around on this topic in particular, that there are surveys out there that actually measure how people feel after their trip. And one report I read said that 22% of people leave Disney World feeling disappointed in some way or another, just kind of like meh about the whole experience, even after spending thousands of dollars, booking resorts, tickets, and feeling like they spent a fortune in the parks. And that's a big number. Like that means 1 out of every 5 guests walk away feeling like, no, not worth it. I actually read a comment yesterday on an article that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but someone said, I'd rather get a root canal with no Novocaine while passing a kidney stone than go to Disney. And I really think all of this happens before the trip even starts. Hello, and welcome to the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. I'm your host, Dana Stanley, creator of Laid Back Magic. As a mom of 3, I know how tough it can be to find time to plan a Disney World trip that doesn't leave you feeling stressed or overwhelmed. That's why I'm here, to help moms like you create Disney vacations that feel even better than they look on paper. Here, we're not chasing perfection, but creating our next favorite memories. So whether you're brand new to Disney or looking to go deeper into the details, this podcast is your go-to for simple tips, mindset shifts, real-life trip recaps, and expert insights to make your trip magical and manageable. New episodes drop every Monday, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment. Okay, let's dive in. Now let's talk about what people actually complain about, because this is where the underplanning definition starts to really matter. I pulled together the top complaints that I have found. And the first one is we spent a fortune and it felt like a burden. So there was a story that went viral of a Florida dad who took his family of 5 to Disney for just one day. And the total cost was almost $1,400. That was kind of like the headline of his post that went viral. And he used the word, like he actually described the feeling with the word punished. He felt punished by the cost. Like he got hit with the ticket prices, even with the Florida resident discount, then the parking fees and the food. And it sounds like they didn't get on many rides. Then realized that if he had done like a little bit more strategy around the lightning lane, the value would have been different. But then on the other hand, he would have spent even more money. But one of the things he mentioned was that if you divided the total cost of what he spent for the day by ride, it probably isn't really worth it. Like he said, I don't want to say it this way, but if you do the average cost per ride, it's not worth it. Now, if we took the same mindset and applied it to other things, like if I think about the things I just like to spend money on, one of the things I am never bothered by is going to the movies. This may be because I feel like there was like a very big chunk of years where we just like didn't get to go to the movies often because our kids were little. We'd have to get a babysitter, but then we're just like sitting and watching a movie and not able to actually talk. So if we did have a date night, it was out to dinner or something like that. But now it's getting a little bit easier to go back to the movies, or at least take my 2 older girls to the movies. And I love it. And I forgot how much I love going to the movies. So I'll usually do like a matinee because it's so much cheaper. But when I go to the movies, like I want to go to the movies. I get the popcorn, I get the drinks. I don't really say no to the girls with like the snacks that they want. Like you want mini pretzels, get them. And if my mom wants to come, like sure, I'll pay for my mom's ticket. Like it's the experience of going to the movies. I have very happy memories of going to the movies as a kid. So I'm happy to do that for mine. And of course, we love our Disney movies, but like we just went to see the new SpongeBob movie, which like I didn't really like it. So I'm picturing when we left, if I had said, oh, that was $72 or whatever for 2 hours. So $36 an hour. It's not worth it. Or I actually didn't think it was as funny as I thought it was going to be. And if I said, I only laughed 3 times, that's $24 per laugh. And like, I know that that sounds crazy thinking that way when it comes to Disney. I personally know people who are like this and would think of it that way. And that's totally fine. Just they're not going to enjoy Disney World then. Just know upfront that you are going to be feeling that way because that is the way your brain works. So it's not necessarily that you or Disney are doing anything wrong. It's just something that is not going to be valued by you. Which ties into the other mention that the costs keep rising and things get more expensive. How do you make it, quote, worth it when the price tag is so high? And I don't really have much to say on this because calling something expensive is just so different for each person. Do I think that Disney World costs a lot of money? Yes. Do I think that it is worth it? Yes. But that is not going to be the case for everyone. But I do have kind of a few tricks up my sleeve for when I am trying to keep the cost down on a Disney World trip. And the first thing is to really work backwards. Like I would want you to price out your ideal trip first. And I'm not saying like go nuts, like we're going to do a VIP day every day and get flown in on a private plane or something like that. Like a reasonable dream trip, starting with where you would love to stay. How many parks would you love to go to? And then from there, you can see how you could tweak maybe the time of year that you go so that the ticket prices are cheaper. Or if you're looking somewhere like top of the line at a deluxe resort, you could rent DVC points to save a little bit of money, which is a conversation for another day. But instead of coming up with a number first of what you can afford, I think you should look into the pricing first. Get just the lay of the land of what is like a Disney normal price. And if you can't go to Disney the way that you want to right now, maybe save for another year. Like I would rather you go less often or put the trip off to do like a trip that you really want versus kind of like forcing it to work and then feeling disappointed, especially when you feel like stretched thin. I want to talk about something we don't admit to ourselves enough, and that's planning a Disney trip is emotional. You're not just picking a resort or just deciding which parks to visit. You're trying to create a memory your kids will carry into adulthood, and that can feel big. It is big. That's why I love sending people to my friend Sarah, aka the Main Street Mom. She plans Disney in this really grounded way that I absolutely love. She handles Disney World, Disneyland, cruises, and yes, even if you're using DVC points. She's the person who will take control if and when you need it. She can book your dining, your enchanted extras, your Lightning Lane pre-selects, watches for discounts, all the stuff that when done right can make a trip that's unforgettable in all the best ways. And she doesn't just vanish once you book. If you get her full service package, which is 3 or more park days, she'll hop on planning calls with you, send you reminders, book your Lightning Lanes and dining for you, and she's on call during your trip, which when you're a mom, you know is priceless. And don't worry if you've already booked your own trip. She offers a la carte planning packages starting at just $50, so you can still get extra help. Find the link for both in the show notes. So what is really going wrong on these trips for people to feel this way? And this is the part where I want to stop and just say that I really do think that the trips don't really like go wrong when you're in the parks. Like, yes, you can have things happen that are not ideal, but for something to like truly fail, I think that happens before you even get there. So when I hear someone say like, I wouldn't do that again, or it's a one and done, there are usually 3 things happening. And it could be a combination of 1, 2, or all 3 of these things. Number 1 is just not setting up your expectations first, either you, your kids, or the whole family. People think that going to Disney World is like a bucket list vacation where it's kind of like a rite of passage. And because of that pressure of feeling like, well, everyone does this, I have to do this, their expectation ends up being that everything should be perfect because of that pressure. But the problem is they don't think about what, quote, perfect means. And really think about it. What is a perfect Disney trip? I honestly have no idea. Because even my husband and I, who have very similar interests, like I've been with him almost as long as I haven't been with him, I think if he wrote down like his dream itinerary, it would look very different to what I would write down. If you're hearing that and thinking, oh my gosh, you're totally right, I haven't even thought about that yet, to help with this, download the free journal I have. I made it to help you set up this foundation before you do anything else. So if you go to laidbackmagicway.com/journal, I'll send that to your inbox and you can get started. Then you can set that up before you do the next mistake I see. And that's jumping right to the fun stuff. And when I say fun stuff, I mean like thinking about what you're going to pack, or Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, or maybe eating at the castle, or seeing Mickey Mouse or the fireworks, like the fun stuff that you're excited about, which you should be. But imagine if you were building a house and you just started with the walls with no actual foundation, right? Like obviously the house would fall down. So picking the fun stuff of like your dining and rides and things, but skipping like the Disney 101 basics of the crowds and your budget and the time of year that you're going, and especially the actual location of your resort, a trip will fall apart in the same way. And I think this is why a lot of families feel burnt out, because they're jumping ahead and maybe even booking these things and kind of setting them in stone willy-nilly of when and where they're going to be. And then they're working their plans around those things. So not only is this going to be hard if you don't know what's important, but it's going to be really hard when you've now kind of booked yourself into a corner. A third mistake I see is missing the context around the cost and the planning. And when I say missing the context, I mean like you expect it to be something else entirely. And I think there's like a huge spectrum here, but most likely it's that you haven't been to Disney World for a very long time. So you have a memory of it as a kid, or maybe you went in high school, that type of thing. This could be the price too. Like maybe you're just not expecting it to be as expensive as it is, and that could be expected. So if you're thinking about taking a trip and haven't thought about costs yet, I do have an episode where I talk about the hidden costs of Disney, and I'll link that below in the show notes. But just wrapping your mind around the cost ahead of time and accepting that you're not necessarily getting your money's worth with certain things. If you think about a bottle of water, for example, is going to be one price at Costco, another price at Target, and another price in the fridge section of an airport. So if you're planning for Disney and kind of making a mental checklist of just line items like, oh, tickets, check, lightning lanes, check, dining, but without actually thinking through how much those things will cost, you can turn into that guy who said he felt punished by the cost. It's probably because he didn't know or think about it beforehand. Or maybe he was just trying to go viral. I honestly don't know. So let's bring it back a little bit of what is the missing piece? What's the secret ingredient to a truly laid back trip to Disney? It really comes down to preparation. But I know that this sounds like a little bit of a contradiction, because laid back is like I go with the flow. I don't have to really prep or prepare and plan for all of these things. But I want you to think of it of like the input versus the output. So there is this rule that comes up a lot in business called the 80-20 rule. Maybe you've heard of it, or Pareto's principle. And without completely putting you to sleep, the 80-20 rule says that 20% of your effort creates 80% of your results. And in business, you could think of it, if you have an online shop that sells clothes, you could realize that 20% of your shop, let's say like the t-shirts, are creating 80% of your sales. Or the 20% of the time you spend at the gym and eating well creates 80% of your weight loss, something like that. So if you think of that in Disney terms, 20% of what you plan determines 80% of how the trip actually feels, how the trip ends up in real time. Because I really don't think that people end up being disappointed because they didn't get on more rides. That just doesn't seem like the real core of the problem. I think they get disappointed because they didn't prepare that right 20%. What I think that 20% usually would look like is where you're staying. I think it's also truly the first hour that you are in the parks, like kind of a little bit of an and or between what time you get to the parks and then like that first hour. I think that's definitely in the 20%. And then also where your dining reservations are, not so like where you're eating, like the restaurants themselves, but the geographical location of them against what you already have planned. And then also knowing kind of like your lines in the sand of like what you have to do, what you would be devastated if you missed. And this could work kind of into your lightning lanes because you can pre-book 3, which makes sense because if you don't want to miss them, you should get a lightning lane for them if you can. And that's it. Everything else I think can be fairly flexible. And that's it. Like I think everything else can kind of work itself out, but that 20% is going to make up 80% of your trip. And that 80% ends up being like you're in better moods. You're all just in better moods. You are spending less money fixing mistakes or like backing up things that you didn't actually need to do and just less waiting around, which to that guy, the less waiting around you're doing, figuring things out on the fly, the more you have time for rides, if that is your non-negotiable. And you want that wiggle room for like the unplanned things. You see Chip and Dale in the lobby or a cast member surprises you with a front row on a ride. Like those things are great. But I would argue that something was either decided or maybe given up, that the person knew what they wanted to do that allowed that for kind of a spontaneous moment, which is what people think is like the magic. All that to say, all of this is really good news because you're already listening to this episode and thinking about these things ahead of time. You're going to grab that free journal at laidbackmagicway.com/journal, and you're going to start making the right decisions really early for your family so that once you're in the parks, you can really enjoy it and be present with your kids and relax, which is the whole point. Now come back next week because we are going to dive into something kind of along these same lines that is not talked about enough. I really think could be the missing piece when it comes to a park day. If you are a woman, you have to listen to the episode next week. And that's about keeping our blood sugar balanced so that we are feeling our best. All right, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and it was helpful for you, it would mean the world to me if you'd write a quick review. Your reviews help more moms like you find the show, and I read every single one of them. Seriously, thank you in advance. You can find me on Instagram at Somewhere Worthwhile, and I'd love to hear from you there. DM me if you have any questions about this episode or what you'd like to see in future ones. Until then, keep planning for your next favorite memory, and I'll see you next time.